Young man, I wish to speak to you today about pornography.
Every day I see men who wish they hadn't slipped off the edge and made their wives cry.
This was not a good thing to be doing, but like addiction happens, it just little by little, and I couldn't stop.
I was attacked by Satan from the cradle, and I never got a chance to experience mortality without this cloud over me.
I was so far gone that I had no idea whether it was the spirit or the adversary.
It's just a preconception that Satan has placed in us since coming into this world kind of as teenagers, that there's no way we could ever amount to anything.
Will you ever be rescued? Will you make it through your own survival story? The answer is yes.
This is a new weapon that Satan has been using.
Deception,
we're not talking
distraction,
about it.
discouragement.
I fight to watch men reaccess the power of God.
I am looking tonight.
It's not out there.
It's become far too normalized.
It's
for men, young and old.
I realize now that I am a warrior
who care enough about this battle between good and evil
against the adversary
to sign on and speak
If
up.
I turn my life around and be the person that they need.
We are at war. And for these next few minutes, I want to be a one-man recruiting station.
Woohoo! And we're back. Thanks for bearing with us over the break. Welcome to the Eternal Warrior podcast, helping young people in their quest for self-mastery, sharing stories from the battlefront against Satan and pornography. Woo! Today, we are going to have a kind of unique episode. Me and Garrett were thinking we want to talk about a very powerful tool that warriors can use, and that's meditation. Meditation and or mindfulness. I think we'll talk about both.
Yeah, they're pretty similar. So
yeah, so we'd love to talk about what's the benefits of meditation. I'd love to drop a few statistics on it. I'm a big fan of it. I found it is incredibly helpful for me in my personal battles. And at the end, if you can listen all the way to the end, we'll have a demonstration presented by yours truly of a guided meditation. Before we jump into it, I just want to really point out the amazing episode we have previously of Chandler and his app Relay. Oh my gosh, speaking of great tools, that is an amazing tool that guy has created for us. And I'm super grateful for it. And what an amazing guy, too. I was not expecting the spiritual giant that we interviewed in that episode. That is so crazy.
for sure. Yeah, we encourage, if you haven't had a chance to listen to it, absolutely go back and listen to it. So that it's not one you want to miss.
Yeah. And yeah, overall, we're seeing a lot of great interaction. We want to hear some more emails. We finally got our first suggestion, which was to make a podcast about meditation. From our boy Travis. Shout out to him. Yeah, so this one's for you, Travis, but incidentally, it's also one that I really connect with. So please keep it coming, guys. We want to hear from you, and we want to tailor this podcast to you. Alrighty. So, meditation in the fight. Yeah, maybe I can ask you, Garrett, and then you can fire some questions at me. I know you've been doing some practices in mindfulness. How do you think that has helped you throughout this fight?
Yeah, I mean, this might be a bit of a unique take on it, but I personally struggle with boredom. It's one of my biggest triggers in this battle, and that's difficult because life is boring most of the time. When you go to work you got your regular 9 to 5, and that's the boring part, right? Just you're there for 8-9 hours, and then you come home, and that's the fun coming home. But during those 9 to 10 hours that I'm at work, I get bored, and rightly so. I mean, it's a boring job. So, when I'm there and I'm struggling, it can be difficult to deal with that, right? Because the only way to practice dealing with boredom is to be bored. And if you're scared of messing up, intentionally making yourself bored is a difficult thing to do. So one of the things that I've started doing as an effort to try and, I guess, expose myself to that boredom is to purposely do exercises where I'm ignoring, the world around me. I turn off my thinking mind. I just for a moment we just sit there present in myself, right? Present in my body and recognizing the sensations inside my body. Now, that might work for 30 seconds, but anything beyond that can be boring, right? But it's a good...
Right.
I'm intentionally choosing to be bored in an effort to try and do some exposure therapy, right? Teach myself to live in that feeling, to live in that moment, and to do it positively. And so that's been my... one of my experiences with it is that positive boredom, if that makes sense.
You're exposing yourself to it and becoming resilient against boredom.
That's right. Yeah.
Are there any specific actions you do that get you into that state?
Yeah, I usually try to combine it with some relaxation techniques. So one of the things that I will do is, first things first, I get myself in a state where I can turn my thinking self off, which is not super hard for me. As we discussed on previous podcasts, I accidentally turned off my thinking self when I went on my mission.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I accidentally turned off the voice inside my head. So it's not that difficult for me to turn that off because I don't have it. It's not there that often. But so turn off the voice inside my head, and that is an important thing, right? When you're trying to do these exercises, you don't want to be talking to yourself through the exercise. Like the idea is to, or at least for me, if I'm talking to myself through the exercise, well then I've ruined the exercise because I'm not actually present. I'm one level abstracted. Does that make sense? So I get in that place, but then from there, what I'll do is I kind of in my head will go to the different body parts.
Okay.
Right. So I imagining
how they feel.
Yeah, how they feel. So I'll check in with each of the body parts, and you can go as detailed as you'd like to go on this. Usually, I cut myself into a few sections. Maybe check with my feet, and then my calves, and then my thighs, and then I'll check with my arms, and check with my chest, check with my head. And just be present in the feelings that I'm having there, or in the physical feelings I'm having there. So, a common one, right? Most people, a lot of people, especially as you go into adulthood, deal with consistent back pain. Right? But for a lot of people, that back pain is so minor that they ignore it, right? They ignore it all day long. That would be one of those things that you check in with, right? You you know, in your brain, you go to your back and you just sit there for a moment, and you allow yourself to recognize all the feelings that you're having. Do you have back pain?
Yeah.
Or do you have just a little bit of discomfort? And don't try to fix the discomfort, just feel it.
Just be with it.
Just be with it, right? Just
Yeah.
take a breath in it, right? Because the goal of this mindfulness exercise, at least for me, is I'm not trying to solve a problem in my body. Instead, I'm just trying to be present with my body.
Yeah.
And be okay with that, right?
That's a principle that Travis actually specifically mentioned. Apparently we talked about this in one of the episodes before. I'll have to go back to which one it was. But yeah, I think I talked about how I was able to focus. I was able to stop a sneeze by focusing on the irritation in my nose and saying, I'm okay with this. I accept this. This is what's happening. And then the desire to sneeze goes away. Mm-hmm. Because if you convince your body that it's not a problem, then it's not a problem. Then it's not going to do anything to change it.
Yeah. And that happens a lot with some of those physical ailments, shall we say, like minor back pain, or here's one that occurs with me, especially when I'm in a high tension environment, specifically referring to pornography. If I'm in a place where I've been tempted a few times that day, when I check in with my chest, what I'll notice is that there's my chest feels weighted. It's not a huge thing. It's not like I'm having a panic attack, but it just feels a little bit weighted. And recognizing that and then saying, okay, I'm just going to feel this for a bit, right? I'm just going to be there for a bit. And oftentimes, just being there for a bit can do something to relieve the tension and the pressure on my chest. And that's been very helpful, especially when I remember to do it. The hard part is remembering to do it, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, man. I thought it was interesting. I forgot to comment about this when you spoke about it, but you said you can't walk yourself through it. You can't be talking to yourself. You have to shut out the voices. And I think that's very interesting because I don't relate to that at all.
you right, yeah.
For me, I can't really turn off the voices, but I can make sure that the voices are focused on what I'm trying to focus on.
Yep.
And so in the meditation I have planned, it is something I came up with over the past few days because I'm feeling a little stressed. I focus on the phrase, nothing exists except the present moment.
Right.
And that helps me to cut off the voice's focus from the past or the present. Because it's the past or the present that we usually worry about because we don't have any control over those. We do have control over the present. And from a, I don't know, philosophic or scientific view, nothing exists except what is happening right now in this present moment.
The only thing that can exist is what is now, right?
Yeah.
Because
the past has ceased to exist, the present has yet to exist, and right now is when things are happening. Holy crap, that is just so mind-boggling to me. Wow.
And it's interesting because, obviously everybody's going to have a differing level of intensity with that voice inside their head. And in no means did I mean to say that I was the only way. Just that for me specifically, with that voice inside my head, If I try to guide myself through it, like in my head, talk myself through the meditation,
yeah,
there's going to be a counter argument voice,
right?
who's like, well, why are you doing this?
Yeah.
Heck, for all I know, it could be Satan. But the point is there'll be that counter argument, and then there's this back and forth between the voice in my head, and that's not good, right? Now I'm focusing too much on the thoughts and not enough on being present, which is why for a lot of people, guided meditation works really well, because then they're not following the voice inside their head, and they can sort of turn that voice off, and they can just pay attention to the external voice, which works. Like that works. Like a lot of people do meditation or mindfulness exercises in nature. And the reason they do that is not so that they're, yes, they're in touch with nature, and that's a good thing, but it's because they can tune out all the voices inside their head and just listen to the natural noise, right? Listen to the, maybe the creek that's going by, or the animals chirping, or the birds, and all of that can be very external voice that guides them through that.
Yeah. Oh man, I think I was first introduced to meditation in the book Aragon. If you're familiar.
I am familiar.
Do you remember the part where he's like becoming this sort of, I forget which book it is, but he's come into the elf culture, and he's like kind of becoming an elf, and he has this sensei master, elf dragon rider, who is trying to teach him how they were taught, and one of them is being mindful, except he can combine this meditation with magic, where he can actually focus in on, like, close his eyes and focus in on like an ant that's crawling a few feet away, and he can see it, he can feel it, he can sense its emotions, and he comes back to his master and he's like, oh, this is so cool, I was able to just be present with this ant for a little while. And the master kind of backhands him, and he's like, you idiot, you're supposed to focus on everything, not one little thing. And those are just two different kinds of meditation. Both of those can be beneficial, but then he was able to practice being aware at everything all at once.
Right.
And that's really cool. So I've experimented with that too, like focusing on one little thing. Like I raise my finger because my mom taught me, like, if you're ever out of focus, just like focus on your fingernail for a second, and it'll bring you back into your frontal lobe.
And that's a simple version of it, but that is an example of mindfulness. Just tuning out the rest of the thing, and just for a second be present with where you're at. Yeah. A lot of the guided meditations that I use an app called Medito, which is super cool. Highly recommend. Not sponsored. Not a sponsor.
Yeah.
As if somebody would sponsor us. That's funny.
Yeah. Eventually, someday. But they're actually kind of struggling. But they have some great courses that are non-profit, no ads, and it was a great introduction to how to meditate. Oftentimes, going back to the point we were discussing, it will ask me to do both, like focus on one little thing at the start, which is usually your breath, because the breath is something very internal, but something that you can easily catch a hold of because you can feel it come out. You can
Right.
have some sort of control over it. And then by the end of the session, it says, let go of your focus of any one thing and bring it, just be aware of anything you feel, any sensation that comes across, anything you can hear, anything you touch, and just be open, aware, and non-judgmental. Non-judgment is a big principle too, because when we react to things, it's because we're labeling like some sort of stimulus as, hey, this is annoying, hey, this is a problem, and instead this allows us to practice just being okay with how things are.
Yeah.
So I found that very
one
helpful.
One of the most successful sessions of meditation I think I've ever had. I was having a hard time. I was at family's house. I was having a hard time. My wife had gone off with her mother, and they were off doing something, and my kids were in bed, and I was just feeling tempted. And so I remember I went into their backyard, and I just laid on the ground in their backyard. And I kind of went through the motions and started to relax and release tension in my body. And I had gone through that, and I was very relaxed, very in a very deep state, when an ant started to crawl on my body, right? Crawled up onto my arm and then started its way up my body. And I didn't do anything, and I just continued to just be aware of my body, to be present, right? And that ant climbed all the way up my arm, crawled across my neck, up onto my face, walked all the way across my face, walked down the other side, and then was off and was gone, right? But it was very interesting for me because through that whole thing, I didn't flinch. I didn't try to brush the ant off. I just felt it.
Wow.
As it crawled across.
I didn't realize you were in the presence of a kung fu master here.
I mean,
that
might sound like
kung
fu master. There. It does. I've never been able to do that again. But that one specific time, it was very healthy. It was very interesting to feel those minor, I don't know what you the minor
little
physical feelings that you get. Yeah, the minor impressions there. It was very interesting to feel that and to be present with it and to not judge it, to just fully just be okay with it and just let it come and let it go, and it was fine, right? And that was beautiful. Now, like I said, I've only ever done that one time. I've only been able to pull off something like that once. So,
yeah, I think that's a beautiful demonstration on how it can be used in the fight, because it sounds like what you're going through is that you're approaching level 2 or level 3 on the chemical scale, and that practice of letting go, it's kind of like the ant came and validated your ability to let go of negative emotions.
Yeah, because when it comes down to it, whatever temptations we're feeling, whatever promptings or urges we're having concerning pornography, they're just an urge. It's just a temptation. It's just a thought, right? And if we're capable of taking a step back and saying, this is a thought or this is an urge, and that's okay, and then letting it go by,
they don't
that's
have
huge.
to define our actions.
Yeah.
It's just a thought, like Harry Potter. You remember book 2, where Harry Potter's freaked out that he should have been in Slytherin, and he absorbs some powers from Lord Voldemort, and he's like, at first he's super disappointed. Like Dumbledore asks him, "But why were you sorted into Gryffindor?" And he's like, "Well, because I asked it to." Dumbledore's like, "Exactly. It's our choices that define us, not our abilities. Or in this case, our thoughts."
Right. I remember when I was on my mission struggling with this, I had a companion there who was quite influential in keeping me in a positive headspace. He had struggled with it in the past before his mission, and he pulled his way through it, and I needed help. So we were chatting about it one day, and he looks at me and he goes, "Do you know that, or do you recognize that you don't have to say yes?" And I was like, "What?" And he's like, "When these thoughts and these urges come, do you recognize that you don't have to say yes? You don't have to follow through. You don't have to do it." And that seems like the most common sense thing that you could possibly say. But at the moment, and it was extremely profound, because honestly, I don't think I ever thought about it that way. I don't think I ever thought about, all right, this comes in and it is my choice to say yes or no, right? I was so focused on just trying to avoid it in the first place so that I didn't have to make that choice, that I didn't really think about, oh, hey, if it does come in, I can just say no. Like, that's an option. And
it's like Satan comes in and says, you know how it's gonna go now. Like, this is the start of your lost battle. This is how it goes. Yeah. If we get caught up in, like, not trying to start the domino fall, we don't recognize that we can stop the domino fall right in the middle of it.
Right. You can just put your hand down and stop it.
Yeah. It's never, until you've lost, it's never too late to try and stop.
That's true. Now, it is important to recognize that it's never too late, but the likelihood of success gets far worse the further you go into the chemical scale. The higher you get, if you're up at a 4 or something like that, like you've gone far enough that it is very unlikely for you to get out by yourself. Right?
Yes.
The general rule of thumb that I have for myself is that if I ever get to a 4, I know that I can't get out by myself. If I'm at a 2, a 1, 2, or 3, like, I can pull myself down from a 1, 2, or 3. But if I get to a 4 or higher, I cannot get out by myself. I have to reach out to somebody.
Yeah.
Whether that's
that connection.
An accountability partner, my wife, whatever it happens to be. It doesn't even have to be pornography related. Sometimes I'll just call my wife and I'll start a conversation with her.
Yeah.
I don't bring up the pornography. Because I don't need to be thinking about it right now. I want to be out of there, and I know that talking with her is going to help me get out. But the point is, right, because we were talking about meditation here, one of the really cool benefits of meditation is it teaches you how to be present in your body.
Yeah.
Right? Because one of the hardest things about the chemical scale is that, 1 through 10, right? And most people recognize when they hit 3, right? 3 is that temptation moment, right? There's the temptation to do bad stuff.
Hey.
But what about 2s and 1s, right? If you're already at a 3, the chemicals are already present, and it's gonna be tough to get out of there. But at a 2 and a 1, you gotta recognize it then, because then you don't have that much chemicals there, right? There's just a little bit there, and you can pull out of that. But for me, it's just a little correction.
Redirection. Yeah.
Yeah. when I started with Men of Moroni, I really struggled recognizing when I was at a 1. Sometimes I'd recognize when I was at a 2, but for the most part, I was catching myself at a 3. And when you're at a 3, you're already pretty far into the scale. Like it's not impossible to get out of the 3, absolutely not. But it's a lot less likely.
Yes.
And so catching yourself at a 2 and a 1 is important. Well, in order to do that, you have to be present in your body. You have to recognize the signs. Like one of the signs for me that we already talked about. I recognize that if I'm getting, if I'm at a 1 or even getting close to a 2, I'll start to have that chest pressure. A little bit of that tension in my chest. I never would have realized that if I didn't take that moment. Yeah. If I didn't take that moment to recognize that and actually be present in my body and to recognize the sensations that were going through my body, I never would have recognized that. That wouldn't be a tool that I could use.
Right. That is so...
Eli, I'm
so cool.
I'm curious, how has meditation helped you with your struggles? Because we talked about my exercises and how I use it, but how has it helped you?
Thank you. I'm glad you asked. I want to remember when I started, because it seems like I've just been slowly getting into it. I don't think I really connected it with the satanic fights in the battle against pornography until after I graduated. I graduated with just sheer willpower and grit and anger and warrior chemistry.
Right.
And during my mission, I had to kind of calm that down. Because you're like, it's hard to be happy and calm and content when you're feeling a powerful emotion like warrior chemistry.
Right. When you're feeling that
and
intense.
People define warrior chemistry differently. Like there can be a push and pull warrior chemistry. That's mentioned in one of the previous podcast episodes, probably in season 2. But for me, it was just like rage, turn into the Hulk.
Right. Yeah, it was the my family member is in danger and I need to save them.
Yeah,
chemistry, not the
exactly. So I started meditation during my mission when there was a lot of stress. And I had to start letting go of things. I was at the church office building, and there's a lot of things that matter a lot when you're at the church headquarters.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this might affect the entire world if you don't get this project done.
Right.
And that's a lot of stress. So what I would do is I have to start setting boundaries for myself. Like, I recognize that being stressed out all the time did not make me the best missionary. It did not increase my capacity to work.
Right.
Despite what my brain thought. My brain was utterly convinced that if I was constantly in a state of panic, that I would get everything done. And that's not true.
It doesn't work that way. Not usually.
No.
I mean, there are some rare people out there, but
yeah,
for the most part, no.
So I started challenging the voice in my head. So what we were talking about voices, I would have this voice that would tell me, oh, I need to get this done I need to sacrifice my lunchtime so I can spend more time working on this Word document. And I started to say, no, I value my health above everything else. It doesn't matter if there's a deadline. It doesn't matter if someone wants to meet with me. I decided to take an hour for lunch, and turn on Do Not Disturb, and just be present eating my food, which was actually more mindfulness.
That is mindfulness, but that's good.
I'd be present eating my food. Oftentimes, I'd go into the bathroom and I'd listen to a guided meditation while I'm sitting on the toilet. And
it's a perfect place. Perfect.
yeah, I thought so. It's a private space. No one's gonna try to talk to you while you're there. At least not the younger missionaries. The older missionaries, you got to be careful of, like, standing in the urinals with them, like, hey, how's your day been doing? I'm like, I'm trying to pee, man. Just let me go. Anyway, so that bathrooms I identified as like a safe space early on that I could find anywhere. And I'd listen to my guided meditations, and I'd let go of anything that was worrying me beforehand and anything that was worrying me in the future. When it started really becoming pertinent to the fight was when I would have sleep battles. I'm one who once I learn a principle, I want to take it all the way, and I wanted to keep myself from having sleep masturbation, like masturbating while you're asleep.
Right.
And I figured if I did that, then it would be so much easier. Like, I wouldn't need to worry about, like, waking up in the middle of the night and feeling like I needed to do it consciously. And it started, for a season, it started to get really bad. Like, I start waking up in the middle of the night all the time and masturbating, and I just felt a lot of guilt from that, and that guilt translated into anxiety for the next night, and to the point where it was really hard for me to sleep, to really hard to get to bed and trust that I wouldn't have a lost battle. And I tried all these different things. Like, I associated, I found the pain point that was often related to my battles, and that was like indigestion. And so I made sure I didn't eat after a certain time, but sometimes that wouldn't work, and I'd still have those lost battles. And I remember one night I was praying, and I'm like, God, I don't know what to do. I really don't want to go to bed right now. I'm so terrified that I won't have control over this. And one of the revelations I got, like, I had all these drills planned out. Like, okay, should I spend some time writing in my journal? Should I go run? Should I physically wear myself out so that I have to sleep? What should I do? And God was like, just go to bed. Just lay in your bed and go to sleep. It's okay. And I'm like, but God, I'm gonna... And he's like, no. Just let it go. It'll be fine. And I did. And it was fine. And I'm like, you gotta be freaking kidding me. this is all I have to do? I just have to go to bed? And I won't lose.
Yeah.
But I realized it was the anxiety. And so now one of the practices I do is I make sure that I feel grateful before I go to bed. And I found a couple of meditations on my different meditation apps. I also use Insight Timer, which has a lot of good tools on there.
Yeah.
Insight Timer has the benefit of, like, it's a collection of a whole bunch of different people giving you your meditation stuff, where Medito is just one guy or a group of people trying to give something comprehensive.
Right.
I found meditations on gratitude, meditations on letting go, and just accepting things as they are, having a hope for a better tomorrow is really impactful. So that's mostly how I use meditation now, and I've had to be careful not to. I guess what I'm really dealing with here is a little bit of OCD-like behavior, where if I find something that has worked, I'm like, great, I got to do this every night now, because that's the only way I'm going to win my battles. But no, I don't hold myself to it. Instead, I hold myself to am I in the right headspace to go to bed? And if it's yes, I don't need to do anything. If it's no, then I can try a little meditation.
It's interesting because that reminds me of the Armed with Righteousness book. So when you start any of the life-changing services programs, you'll get 2 books. You'll get the Like Dragons Did They Fight, which we've talked about on this podcast multiple times. But you'll also get one called Armed with Righteousness. And in it talks about the fact that if you spend all of your waking hours focused on how to beat the problem and focused on all the little steps you need to take in order to not lose a battle, right? You are inevitably going to lose a battle. And the reason that is because you're focused on losing a battle.
Right.
On not losing it, but you are focused on the battle itself. Rather than focusing on something good, you're focused on the negative thing. And this is true of most things in our life. If you want something to change, focusing on not doing something bad is not the way to change.
Right.
It's focusing on something good instead of the bad thing. And that is something that I think can be used in this meditation, where meditation is something good, right? It's a good thing.
Yeah.
It's a thing that allows us to be more present and to let go of some of those painful things in our lives. So it's something good to focus on. And if we just choose to focus on that instead of something else, right, we can create a lot of good. And I think that's similar to what you're talking about with your nighttime experiences, was recognizing, hey, it's okay.
Yeah.
It's okay. I
was so focused on what I didn't want to happen that I let go of what I did want to happen. And yeah, just like you said, it's not helpful. Yeah. Are they passing out Armed with Righteousness along with Like Dragons Do They Fight? They
do for the Men of Moroni program. They might not do it for the other programs.
Yeah. Well, maybe it changed since I graduated, because I had to buy Armed with Righteousness.
You had to get that one?
Yeah.
Yeah. When I signed up for the Men of Moroni program, I got both. So they might have changed.
Sweet.
So
that's cool. Yeah. highly recommend Armed with Righteousness. It has a ton of great tools in tandem with Like Dragons Did They Fight.
Yes.
Maybe I'll add a little link. We've talked a lot about these different principles and a lot about the chemical scale, and I think it would be good to. Well, I'll add some resources in the bottom of this episode. That'll be helpful. I know not to brag, but I know I produced a video on the chemical scale recently for life-changing services, and so I think that will be pretty good. Sufficient.
Yeah, just for all of our listeners, the chemical scale is something you'll find it's described in Like Dragons Did They Fight. And then so we've mentioned that, we talk about that, and that's where you'll find it. That's where it's detailed out. So if you're ever curious what we mean when we say, I was at a 1 or I was at a 3 or anything like that, that's all part of the chemical scale, and you can find that in pretty good detail inside of Like Dragons Did They Fight.
Yeah. All right. Well, I have some fun things. I know you're not much of a voices person, but would you be willing to walk through a guided meditation with me?
Absolutely. And to be clear, I'm not much of a voices inside my own head. Other people's voices are fine. I'm totally good with guided meditation. It's the voices in my own head that I'm like, shut up.
Right. Listen to my dulcet tones. Yeah. Before I do, I want to lay down. I looked up some cool facts about meditation.
Let's hear it.
So over the past 10 years, the amount of adults in the U.S. Practicing meditation has tripled, which is pretty cool. I bet that's due to just us being more aware, being more like exercising our mental capacity a little bit more than our physical capacity. And 7% of U.S. children practice meditation as well, which is
that's interesting.
I thought that's pretty cool, and that's also a big improvement from 10 years ago when it was like 1.4%.
Dang, that's a big improvement.
Yeah. It's also the number 2 mind-body practice right underneath yoga. There you go. And what you were talking about, back pain, that also has a statistic as well. The back pain, people who suffer from back pain and practice meditation are more likely to experience a 30% improvement in their ability to carry out their daily tasks compared to those only taking medication.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, I don't suffer from severe back pain, but on certain days I'll have some back pain, and when I take a moment to just be present in it and accept it for what it is, it helps. It does. I don't know why it helps, but it does.
Yeah. The hard thing, like, it's really hard with severe pain, but it's really helpful for little annoyances. Like, this was actually mentioned by the guy who suggested this episode, good old Travis. He was having a headache, and he tried out just accepting the headache. And to quote him, the headache went away. It disappeared. Right. And that's it's telling you that there's no longer a problem. If there is a significant problem, it probably won't go away.
Right. This we're not advocating meditation over hospital
Over
visits,
medicine.
okay? But that's not not what we're advocating.
Yeah,
But for minor things, it can be a big help.
Yeah, I've tried in the past with my multiple medical problems. It doesn't work too bad, but the main thing that was hard for me to accept, acceptance is the whole thing. But my dad told me just the other day, it's like the point of like meditation over pain is not to solve the pain, just recognize it's there and say, it's okay. I accept you as part of the present moment because you are there.
Right.
Yeah, and even just that act can, well, it at least improves your attitude on the situation.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Cool.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think it is a reflection of a really good principle. You know, you mentioned the statistics of 3 times as many adults are doing it now than they were before, and I feel like a lot of that has to do with the stigma that there used to be about Eastern medicine, being fake or not real and or not okay to do, or somehow you weren't Christian or something like that. Like there were a lot of weird stigmas, but
right.
It is something that I appreciate in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, is that they openly tell people to find truth wherever it is and accept it.
Yeah.
And so recognizing that there's some truth in meditation and being mindful and present in the moment is okay. Yeah, recognize that there's truth there and accept it and be okay with that. And that's great. There is truth in a lot of these things that we might look at it and be like, that doesn't sound very scientific. And you're like, well,
yeah,
if it works, it works.
Yeah. And there's you can look into it. There's a lot of science now that's come out about meditation.
Right.
I recommend Dr. Huberman. He has a good episode on what meditation does. But should we dive into it? I'm excited. Yeah, I've written out what I talked about earlier of letting go of the past and the future and just being in the present. So for our listeners, see if you can get into a comfortable position to follow along. Doesn't have to be this crazy like lotus position or like crossing your legs in a pretzel. It can just be like sitting down. I've sometimes gotten away with meditating while doing the dishes, but it's not very effective. So I'd suggest finding a place where you can be still, maybe a place where you can close your eyes. And let's start off. All right. So once you found your position where you can relax, start by grounding yourself by taking a few deep breaths in through the nose and out through the mouth. Once again, in through the nose and out through the mouth. And now a little slower, in through the nose and out through the mouth. This should start to ground you in the present moment, should start to relax your brain and your body. Now let go of controlling your breath and just let it come naturally. And watch as your stomach and your chest rise and fall. Just notice what they do. Don't try to control what they do anymore. If you start to get distracted while trying to focus on your breath, that's okay. The focus of meditation is not to be undistracted, but it's choosing to refocus yourself every time a distraction appears, whether it's a thought, whether it's a noise. Just let the thought pass through you and focus your attention back on the breath. Once again, it's okay if distractions come. It is the very appearance of these distractions that give us the opportunity to refocus, come back to our focus, to come back to the present moment. If you feel any tension in any part of your body, notice that. And through your breath, let it go. Slowly relax each muscle that you find tension in. In these last few minutes, we're going to introduce an affirmation. An affirmation is a simple phrase that gets repeated in your mind. And this is what you will turn your focus to in these last few minutes. So, while keeping your breath steady, while keeping your body relaxed, focus on the phrase, "Nothing exists except for the present moment." your focus shift to this thought. Nothing exists except for the present moment. Let this thought repeat in your mind. If it's helpful, you can assign a meaning to it. You can think about what this means. But if any thoughts start distracting you from the present moment, simply let it go. Let it come in and let it go. Don't try to force it out. You can tie this repetition of this phrase, "nothing exists except the present moment," to your breath. Let's try that a few times. Breathe in. Nothing exists except. Breathe out. The present moment. Once again, breathe in. Nothing exists except. Breathe out. The present moment. When you're ready, you may open your eyes. Take this feeling with you as you go about your day. And until next time, I promise to be of service to you and will allow you to be of service to me until both you and I successfully defeat this demon that assails us.
Woo!
Woo!
If you're listening to this podcast, you have probably found that you are in need of, you are strongly desiring, a level of self-mastery that you have not been able to achieve on your own. Or you are a loved one or a parent who knows someone who would like to achieve that level of self-mastery. It's not fun to be in that situation. Been there, done that. I've become a specialist in this area by spending 30 years initially searching for and harvesting eternal principles found in the world of psychology, science, and the words of the prophets, many of them found in the Book of Mormon, for my own sake first, and then I found that they're of great value to others. Instead of just hoarding these concepts, we put them into a book form that is easy for you to access. Like Dragons Did They Fight? You'll understand the reason why it's called that when you start reading it. But go to likedragonsfree.com, get your own free copy of it, download it, and then when you're ready to talk over your circumstances and make a battle plan, call 877-HERO-877, in other words 877-4376. Talk to our headquarters people, and if necessary, they'll arrange for you to have a consultation with me. I am sad that you're going through this, but I've watched thousands and thousands of young warriors gain the confidence and strength they need to be able to have the lives they want now and the futures they desire to have. We will see you soon.